Hello and welcome to this episode of Math with Martinez. In today's video, we are going to be looking at complex numbers. So let's go ahead and begin by considering this number 5 plus 2i. Because 5 is what we would highlight as the real number, and 2 is what we would, the 2i is a pure imaginary number. They are not like terms. They are not like terms, and therefore cannot be combined. This type of expression is what we will define as a complex number. A complex number, whenever it is written in standard form, will look like A, where A is the real part, and to that will be some value B times I, where that is called the imaginary part. And these are just a type of number in our number system. We have real numbers, but then even more broad than that is this category called complex numbers. So our goal today is to be able to do some operations with these complex numbers, the first of which is to add and subtract. So here is how that process will work. You're going to simplify by just combining those like terms together. So we would take the real parts, negative 11 plus 9, and what does that give us? A negative 2. And then we take their imaginary parts and add that together because the operation here is to add. And so that's going to give us a positive 5i. And that is our final answer. Look at example number 3, and can you tell me how this is different than example number 1? The difference is that we are taking the difference. So when we combine our terms here, when we look at combining those terms, it's 7 minus 2, which is 5. And likewise, negative 2 minus 6, which is a negative 8i. So you've just got to be very careful there that when you are combining that you identify, is it addition or subtraction that we are applying. And last of all, the operation that we're going to close with here is multiplying complex numbers. And I do want you to recall from earlier in this unit that when we have I squared, that simplifies to negative 1. This is very important to recall. It will help us tremendously in simplifying. So let's go ahead and begin that process here. To simplify, we're going to have to distribute. So we're saying 2i times the 8, and we're saying to then subtract 2i times a 3i, which is going to simplify quite a bit. 2i times 8 is 16i, and then here we have a negative 6i squared. But remember what we said about I squared. What is true about I squared? It is, in fact, negative 1. So we really have 16i minus 6 times a negative 1, which gives us a positive 6. When we write our final answer, we will want to do so in the form that we saw above. Real part first. The real part here is 6. And then we will have our imaginary part. And there you have it. This next one is double distribution, and let's see if we can do this a little bit more mental math style. 7 times 4, the first terms, that's going to be 28. 7 times a negative I is a negative 7i. I times 4 is a positive 4i. And I times a negative I is a negative I squared. But what is true about I squared? We know that that really means that we're going to be subtracting a negative 1. Be aware of that. And then let's go ahead and simplify over here. We can combine these two terms, negative 7 and 4. That's going to be a negative 3i. And that 28 will soon simplify and combine. We know that minus a negative, we have this 28 minus a negative. Those are terms that can combine. 28 minus a negative 1 is actually to add, so we have 29. And then the imaginary part, 3i. There you have it. You can see that it's really important that we know what like terms are and that we recall, like we made the note of here in the margin, that I squared can be simplified. And that allows us to write our answer in this form that we saw, the standard form of a complex number. We've got one more that I want to do here. Let's go ahead and begin. We're asked here to square this complex number, which really means to take 6 minus 2i times 6 minus 2i. That's what it means to square something. So now let's go ahead and do that. Distribution. That's going to be 36 and then minus 12i. Again, those inside terms now, minus 12i. And then the last terms, that's going to be a positive 4i squared. 36 cannot combine yet, but these two can to give us a negative 24, negative 24i plus 4 times what, ladies and gentlemen? Negative 1, because I squared is negative 1. So to finish it out, we have 36 plus a 4 times a negative 1. A 4 times a negative 1 is actually a negative 4. So that's going to be a 32 because we're subtracting 4. And then our imaginary part, negative 24i. So there you have it, guys. We have done the operations of adding, subtracting, and multiplying complex numbers. If you had any questions, will you please take a moment to share those now? And until next time, stay fired up.